Google is giving us a glimpse inside of its new headquarters in the Loop.
City of Chicago grants Google permits to renovate the Thompson Center as it prepares.
Google will be the new tenant. It gives the tech company a major presence in the Loop.
This is one of the most expensive government buildings ever constructed in Illinois. For 37 years, nobody wanted it. $172 million built it. $105 million sold it. $280 million is what it took to make it work. How does a building double its budget before a single worker moves in? What happens when one quiet construction decision outlasts 3 governors? What does it feel like to work inside a building nobody could fix and nobody would leave? Who counted sale money in the budget before a real buyer had agreed to pay it? And why did the buyer commit nearly 3 times the purchase price just to make the building work? The block at 100 West Randolph had once been one of the most recognized addresses in Chicago. The Sherman House Hotel stood at that corner from 1837, directly across from City Hall, surrounded by movie palaces, jazz clubs, and stage theaters that filled every night of the week. By the 1970s, most of that was gone. The Sherman House shut its doors in 1973. The North Loop had gone quiet, and city leaders knew it needed something significant to bring it back.
Thompson Center in the Loop is topping the annual list of the state's most endangered historic places. The Thompson Center sits on the corner of Randolph and Clark in the Loop. The endangered designation comes from Landmarks, Illinois.
In 1978, Governor James Thompson chose that block for something different. He commissioned a building that would change how Americans thought about government architecture. He didn't want another flat federal box. He wanted something that announced Illinois. The Sherman House was demolished in 1980 to make way for it. Helmut Jahn, a German-born architect based in Chicago, best known for designing the United Airlines terminal at O'Hare, delivered the James R. Thompson Center, a 17-story curved glass atrium wrapped in salmon teal and white panels. A full city block, 1.2 million square feet of open civic space. At the time, nothing in American government construction looked remotely like it. The building would consolidate 50 separate state agencies under one roof, ending the waste of scattered leases across the city. Independent analysts called it a net savings for Illinois taxpayers. Supporters saw it as a monument to transparent government, the glass walls a literal metaphor for openness. At the ribbon cutting in May 1985, Governor Thompson stood inside the atrium and called it a building for the year 2000. He meant it as a compliment. That was the plan. Here's what actually happened. The engineering mistake, hidden in the glass. The original budget was $85 million. By the time the building opened, the final cost had reached $172 million. The design called for custom curved double-pane glass, 2 layers with a sealed air gap between them which reduces heat transfer in both directions. In a Chicago summer, it keeps solar heat out. In winter, it holds interior warmth in. But curved double-pane panels at that scale were prohibitively expensive, and as costs climbed, contractors substituted single-pane glass instead. Single-pane conducts heat freely in both directions, no meaningful buffer between inside and outside temperature.
Has been a headache since it opened in 1985 with major heating and cooling problems and inefficient workspaces.
Gary Scoyan, executive director of the Capital Development Board, the Illinois agency that managed all public construction projects appointed directly by Governor Thompson, later conceded the project ran about $15 million over its original budget. Cost overruns, he said, were baked into how Illinois ran public construction. Too many separate contractors, no economic tie between them, no single person with authority to hold the line. The state saved money on the glass. It would spend the next 4 decades paying for that decision. Nobody who approved the downgrade lost a dollar. Then the building opened and workers found out what single-pane glass does in Chicago. The Illinois Auditor General released a formal report before the building had been open a full year. The Auditor General is the independent state office that reviews how public money is spent. Its March 1986 report found the atrium was climbing past 110 degrees Fahrenheit on summer days, while the air conditioning ran continuously and failed to keep up. The office surveyed 39 state agencies. The top 2 reasons workers gave for reduced efficiency: temperature and noise. The report issued 18 formal recommendations and identified the HVAC system as unconventional in ways that, in the Auditor General's own words, complicates the debugging process. The report went into a filing cabinet. Not one of those recommendations was fully implemented. By 2009, 23 years later, the consequences were visible from the street. Drainage problems had been quietly corroding the building's exterior columns, water seeping in, rust expanding inside the concrete granite panels, cracking from the pressure building behind them. That year, a 600-pound slab broke free and landed on Clark Street below. Nobody was killed. The state stripped every remaining granite panel off every column before another one came down. Scoyan was asked about the 1986 report in a 2019 interview with WBEZ Chicago's public radio station. He said he didn't remember it. Then he added, "To let it just fall apart is really kind of criminal. The report still exists. Then it gets worse." 2,200 state employees reported to this building every morning. In summer, workers kept small fans running at their desks while the air conditioning cycled on and off without effect. The open atrium pulled conditioned air upward and vented it before it reached the office floors. On the worst days, upper-level workspaces pushed past 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Workers used umbrellas indoors, not because of rain, but because the solar glare through single-pane glass made it impossible to see their computer screens. In winter, the same glass that failed to block summer heat failed to retain warmth. Atrium spaces dropped toward freezing. The roof leaked chronically, with state documents taking water damage across multiple administrations. There were rat infestations. There was mold. The carpet near the governor's Chicago office was held together with duct tape. Every one of these conditions was documented. Everyone persisted. And here's the part nobody wants to answer. From 2017 to 2019, Illinois counted between $200 and $300 million in Thompson Center sale revenue in its state budget, 3 years in a row before a single bid was accepted. The building hadn't sold, the money didn't exist, but the line item was there, used to make the numbers balance on paper. Meanwhile, the deferred maintenance kept growing. The operating costs kept running. Chicago was losing more than $20 million a year in property tax revenue because a state-owned building sits exempt from local taxation. 3 governors had tried and failed to sell the building. When the sale finally closed in 2022, Illinois took $105 million for a building that cost $172 million to construct, one that had consumed $17 million a year to operate for 37 years. And that the state's own estimates said would require over $500 million to repair. That gap didn't close itself. It came from working people. That is what 40 years of deferred decisions looks like when the bill finally arrives. Someone else did the math differently. The buyer saw something Illinois had stopped looking for.
Well, new at 11, the Thompson Center here in the Loop has officially gotten a new owner.
But the deal really getting the attention today is who is going to move in once it's renovated.
A development venture led by Prime Group and Capri Investment Group, 2 Chicago-based real estate firms, purchased the building in 2022 and immediately lined up Google as anchor tenant. The technology company is planning to set up its headquarters here. Google committed $280 million to gut the building down to its concrete frame and rebuild it with construction beginning in 2024 and move-in targeted for 2027. The Thompson Center sits directly above Clark and Lake Station, serving 6 separate train lines: the blue, green, orange, pink, purple, and brown. No other building in the Loop sits on top of all 6 at once. For a company trying to bring 2,000 employees into one urban headquarters, that isn't a convenience. It's a foundational asset that cannot be replicated at any other address in Chicago. Structural engineers found something equally important: the concrete and steel load-bearing systems needed zero reinforcement. Every problem the Thompson Center had, the glass, the HVAC, the mechanical and electrical systems, was in its skin. Those things can be replaced. A compromised structural frame cannot. The state's own repair estimates had reached $525 million by 2026, without building anything new. A full gut renovation came to $280 million. Illinois had been pricing the liability. Google was pricing the bones. And all of it traces back to one decision. One substitution, single-pane glass instead of double, triggered $629 million in operating costs. The warning is not unique to Illinois. A similar pattern showed up in Portland, Oregon, with the Portland Building. Another government office designed as an architectural statement. It opened in 1982, was praised as a landmark of postmodern design, and later became known for leaking walls, poor natural light, and difficult working conditions. Portland chose renovation over demolition. The main project budget was $195 million, but a 2021 Portland City auditor follow-up found total costs had grown to $214 million and warned that full costs were still not transparent to decision-makers or the public. Different city, different architect. Same lesson and the same bill paid by the same people who had no say in the original decision. When government buildings are approved as symbols, first the image gets celebrated early. The operating problems arrive later, and the people using the building every day become the ones who discover what was not priced honestly at the start. $17 million a year for 37 years. That's roughly $629 million in operating costs alone before a single repair. Divided across Illinois' working adults, that's about $130 per taxpayer over the life of the building. Not for a road, not for a school, for a glass box that couldn't hold a temperature. This wasn't a building that failed. It was a procurement system that rewarded cutting corners at approval and punished nobody for the 4 decades of consequences that followed. Some will argue Google's $280 million renovation proves the structure had value all along, that Illinois simply lacked the will to fix what it owned. That's a fair read. The bones were sound. The transit access was irreplaceable. A private company did in 2 years what 3 governors couldn't do in 20. But the question that goes unanswered is this: who authorized the glass downgrade in 1981? And why was nobody required to answer for it when the 1986 audit landed on their desk? Nobody who made this decision is being asked to justify it. There is a government building in your city running the same math right now. Deferred maintenance climbing, operating costs above market rate, a repair estimate that grows every year the fix gets postponed. You just don't know which one it is yet. The project you just watched took years to fail publicly. The next one on this channel took longer and cost more. Subscribe, because by the time it makes the news, it's already too late. Comments are open. Name your city.